Next part we're going to create is called the pegboard. We're going to start by opening a new standard IPT. It says label the front, top, and right side of the pegboard below. Think about the view you are drawing before you dimension the rectangle. Create a pegboard part 3/4 of an inch in height, 5 3/4 of an inch in width, and 3 inches in depth. And notice how it's oriented. So I can start by drawing this rectangle in the front, and I can extrude that back this way 3 inches. Then I can put a sketch on top, and I can draw this circle and this square, and I can extrude cut those through. Or, and if I did that, I would start that in the XY plane. Notice the XY plane is our front view plane, and that's where I would start that. Or what I could do is I could start my new sketch in my XZ plane, which would be our top view. And then I would draw my rectangle with my circle and my square. And then I would extrude the part up 3/4 of an inch. And I would have the circle and the square holes there already. So that's actually the easier way to do it. So that's the way I'm going to do this. So create a new 2D sketch in the XZ plane. I'm going to draw a rectangle. And I know that they want this to be 3 inches in depth. I'm going to double check this dimension. 5 3/4 inches in width. Zoom out. Okay, now what I need to do is I need to put my circle in here. Notice I do want this centered. Before I go any further, I'm going to measure this in a sense. And I need to make sure that the distance here is equal with the distance of the square when I put this over. So you notice it says right here, holes that accept the round and square pegs you designed. So when we draw the circle and the square, I want to make sure I draw them size-wise the same as this square peg and this round peg. What that means is I did a 1-inch diameter on this circle, or the peg rather, so I need to do that in the circle. And I did a 1-inch width on the square peg, so I need to do that here. Both holes should be properly centered both vertically and horizontally within the rectangular base. So we're going to have to do some applied math here as well. First thing I'll do, I'll dimension the circle to 1 inch. Now I want this located directly in the middle, so I'll dimension from the center point of the circle to the bottom of our rectangle, and notice it's 1.5 inches because I actually used my shortcut dotted line earlier. So I'm just going to hit the check mark on that. And the last thing I'm going to do is dimension from the center of the circle to the edge. Now this is the tricky one. I want the spacing to be equal from here to here, here to my square, and my square to the edge here. Now we dimension a circle by its center point. When we dimension a square, we don't dimension by their center point, we dimension by the edges. So that's going to change some stuff for us. Basically, I need to divide this in thirds. So I can actually do a formula. So I'll put a parenthesis, and I will do 5.75 divided by 3. Now close my parentheses. You could actually do it without the parentheses also, as long as the formula makes sense mathematically. It'll allow you to do this. So basically what I'm saying is I want the center point of this located 1/3 of the way across 5 3/4 of an inch. So it's just the check mark, and you notice it adjusts that for us. I'll draw my 2-point rectangle, and I will dimension the top to 1 inch and the side to 1 inch. Doesn't matter which top or which side. You could do the top and the right side like I did. You could do the left side, or you could do the bottom. So 2 of the 4 sides. Now I'm going to dimension from the top here to the top here, and I want that to be 1 inch because that's what my circle is. It's from the edge here to the top there, it's 1 inch. Again, I could have done from the bottom edge of my circle, excuse me, from the bottom edge of my square to the bottom edge of the rectangle. I could have made that 1 inch. Doesn't really make a difference. Now there's a couple different ways we could do this. I could write a formula and dimension it from the edge here to here, and I could do 5.75 divided by 3, but then I would have to subtract half an inch. Or I could draw some construction lines in here, and I could then dimension everything from the center of the square itself. This is probably the easier way, but the other way is a little more of a higher level, and it requires less drawing. So I'll show you both ways. I'm just going to dimension from this line to the edge, and I'm going to use the same exact formula I did before, 5.75 divided by 3. And you notice the spacing from the edge here to there is the same as the spacing from the edge here to there. Go back and take a look. It looks about right. Now what I'm going to do, right click, select OK. And I'm going to actually left click on this dimension. I'm going to delete it. And I'm going to delete this line. So that was the first way we could have done that. The second way, I can dimension from the edge here to here, and I'll use that. Now I'm going to have to use my parentheses because I'm going to use my 5.75 divided by 3, close the parentheses, and then I'm going to subtract half an inch. Now it should accept that. Again, you could put the parentheses at the end here and put them all the way at the beginning, and that would work as well. Basically what I'm saying is I want you to divide this into thirds, but then I have to subtract a half of an inch because I naturally, this first part of this equation works only if we're measuring from the center of this square, which in this case we're not measuring from the center. Now we're measuring from the edge. And I could also write this from this edge here, but then instead of subtracting a half an inch, I would have to add a half an inch. So I'll click OK. And notice how it didn't move at all, and that's because it's pretty much the same thing. And if you click on the dimension again, you'll see the formula. The inventor kind of changes that up a little bit so it looks a little differently. Don't let that scare you. And don't let this fool you either. This is a different dimension than this, and that makes sense because this is measuring to the center, and this is not measuring to the center. It's measuring to the edge. So we're going to leave that the way it is. We'll finish the sketch. And notice it kind of spun it around on me there. That's okay. I'll extrude. I'm going to select this, and I'll change this to 3/4 of an inch. You can do 0.75, or you could do 3 divided by 4, which is 3/4. Doesn't matter if you, in this case, it does not matter if you extrude down or if you extrude up. Click OK, and let's save this as Pegboard.